Hello and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy podcast. My name is Jed. Today we are in the Meno, if my microphone wants to cooperate. We're in the Meno. We are on the hunt to discover what is the excellence of the soul. And it's dark where I'm at the moment. Turn up the lights, wrong direction. What is the excellence of the soul or what is virtue? And can it be taught? That's the question we're on. Now, last time we talked about a significant clue to our puzzle, the dialectic. And we looked at the text itself and asked the question, did it fit within the dialectic? Can we use the dialectic to also understand the text itself? Now, for those who are new, the dialectic is the structure of understanding, the structure of reasoning, and in the text that we're reading, it's the method to make one out of the many, or how to define something. The question on the table is, the story is a young Meno rocks up to Socrates and says, "Hey Socrates, do you think virtue, the excellence of our soul, can be taught?" And Socrates said, "Well, hang on there, son. Do you even know what it is before you are describing whether or not it can be taught?" Now, this might sound familiar to anyone who watches late night talk shows or comedy news shows where you have a reporter going to a supporter of a politician and saying, "Hey, by the way, do you think we should remove this thing or this thing should be banned from our government?" And they say, "Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's terrible. My politician says, yes, that's nasty thing." And then they'll say, "By the way, what is it?" And they won't be able to give an answer. Literally, the time of the recording, there was a segment on Jimmy Kimmel where they were asking those sorts of questions. Should we remove this? Is this corrupted? No, absolutely. What is it? I have no idea. So we're in a similar situation with Meno. He's talking about what can be done, or describing the qualities of virtue. Does he even know what it is? Now, as we read, we want to see ourselves in the text as much as we can. Are we like Meno? When are we like Meno? When are we like Socrates? So a good example of this is goodness. We all want to benefit ourselves. We all want to benefit other people. We want justice in the world, but do we know what it is? You could say that all conflict is between people doing what they believe is good. Then why is there conflict? We all want good. We all want justice. We all want the good. Maybe it's because we hold different definitions of what is good. Literally, that's where we are in the text. In the text, Meno has given his definition of virtue. It's changed from the beginning. In the beginning, it was harming your enemies and being good to your friends and escaping any sort of punishment yourself. But now it's to be able to desire good things and to be able to acquire them. What is good things? That's where we are in the text. Socrates has helped him realize that, he hasn't realized yet. He's asking him, don't all people desire good things? Meno says it doesn't appear to be that way. It appears that there are some bad guys who want bad things. Now, again, this is something that is a very common way of thinking, even in our world. We need to invade or enslave, or it's okay to exploit certain people because they're bad. The people over there are bad. We can blame them. We can bomb them. We can steal their stuff. Oh, the people being exploited by capitalism, that's because they're lazy. They haven't pulled themselves up from their bootstraps and become billionaires themselves. They're bad. What makes somebody bad? Well, it's because they desire things that they know are bad. That's what makes them deserve punishment or exploitation, or at the time of recording, genocide that's happening at the moment. They're bad people. Hang on a second. Socrates has floated the question: do people desire things they themselves have recognized are bad, or only things they've been led to believe are good but are actually bad? They have been conned or tricked. They are holding a false definition about what's good and bad. That's where we are at the text. But it's interesting how this part of the text also reflects the whole of the text. Because people are seeking things they think are good but are actually bad. They don't have a good understanding of what good is. Just like Meno is seeking virtue and asking whether or not it can be taught, and he doesn't have a good understanding of what virtue is. Could this be a fundamental cause of all human conflicts? That's another question we can ask ourselves. So, after realizing that, or I don't know whether he has realized his definition of virtue is bad, but he has realized he doesn't know how to come to definitions. When asked what virtue is, he could only list things that he likes. Again, this is how many human beings think. They don't have a definition, they just have things that they have been led to believe are preferences. I like this person looks like me, this person grew up in the same way I did. I like this thing. I benefit from capitalism, I like it. Therefore, and the problem is people don't say, oh, this is what I like and don't like. They say, this is right. This is good. This should be a law. They universalize their particular personal preferences. That's the word respect. I don't like when this thing happens, but instead of just saying that, I will say it's a universal law and you should have not done it. When you said this thing that I don't like, that's bad. And you are bad because you should have known better. You knew it was bad and you desired it anyway. Therefore, I can justify violence towards you. All of this is inherent in such a simple word as disrespect. That's why, if you're ever watching a TV show or movie and you hear the word disrespect, count to 20. I guarantee within 20 seconds there'll be violence. Because it's stupid. It's saying this is what I like and you should obey me. Not only should you obey me, you should have guessed my personal preferences and given up your own to obey me, because my personal preferences are not just preferences, they are absolute laws. They are principles. Therefore, you have disrespected me. Which means you are bad. And tied to the idea of disrespect, it's a two-step dance. Not only are my personal preferences the absolute truth and you should have obeyed them, because you didn't, you are bad, and therefore you deserve punishment. Punishment being another evil word, along with disrespect, two of the most dangerous words in our English language, because deserve, punishment. Deserve can be tied to, punishment. I don't know, was it deserve or punishment? Which is the worst? Deserving punishment together, let's say. Because that's the way of smuggling in violence. In order to act in an unjust way or exploit, you need to justify violence. I'm not just doing bad because of a sickness within my soul. It's justified. I can feel righteous just about doing the sickness, inflicting suffering on others because you deserve it. How can somebody deserve to suffer? How are they benefited? When you go into a doctor's office, does he make you suffer more? No, of course not. That's not an art. It doesn't benefit anybody. Unless we give it the word punishment. So, very simple if you reason it through. It's mind-boggling to me that human beings haven't. But we are reading a text that has the opportunity for someone to do that, because Meno thinks there is such a thing as doing harm or punishing or violence or killing enemies, and he has tied that to his idea of virtue, just like many people do today. And by the way, that primitive desire is preyed upon by grifters. That's the right-wing movement. They prey on the idea that, oh yes, it's good, that desire to injustice, to harm other people, that's actually good. And you are good for being bad. And vote for me, and we will, you can fantasize about playing that out by murdering people who look different to you, immigrants, people who share different beliefs, and so on and so on. So it's by the way, what always turns out to be the case is those very people who have been conned in that way find out, oh, this political party that has campaigned on my desire to harm people that I think are bad because they're different to me, they're harming me. Someone different to them because I'm poor and they're rich, or I'm not the political class. So we call that face-eating leopards. The face-eating leopard party has eaten my face. I can't believe it. So this is called, so this is the con, this is the grift. The grift is to prey on this false idea of goodness, false idea of virtue, that makes a good what is actually bad, the bad parts of our soul, hurting others, harming others, all of the things that we that are against what we're reading here, benefit, goodness, beauty, all of the things that are actually tied to virtue, the exact opposite of that, so we could call it vice. Grifters take somebody's vice that we are here to learn about and purify ourselves from. They take that, and instead of encouraging people to self-reflect with understanding, with the logos, with the dialectic to purify what's false, and then use that same art to learn what's true, instead of doing all of that, they say, you don't have to, you're already perfect. All your ignorance, all your vice is actually good. Let's take your vice and pretend it's a virtue. Let's cosplay as being a knower. And it's very easy to see when you see these interviews with people who have been tricked to voting for those people who are actively working against their interests, voting for the people who will harm them. These people really enjoy acting as if they know things when they're ignorant. That was the thing we were talking about. That's the reoccurring segments on comedy channels. You interview these people who are voting for something like, so let's just use Trump as an example, because it's very easy to see and it's present in the time of recording. What do you think about this? And the Trump supporter will go, oh yes, I'm very certain about this. I know a lot about it, and I think this is good and this is bad and this is who we should invade. And you can tell that they're not very intelligent. They haven't spent the time to reflect and understand the subject, but they really enjoy playing the role of the knower. Now, this is really important. We have to understand that, because this is the human condition and we are humans. There is a part in our soul that's very primitive, very primal. That's an urge to imitate people we consider to be knowing. If Trump is the model of knowing, and he doesn't know anything, he's an idiot. But if that's what is called knowing, then I want to be like that. This is what we examine in the series called Philosophical Midwifery, how to understand that urge to be like our models of knowing, and how our job is to understand that and remove it, free ourselves from it, so we can actually follow our actual desire to actually be knowing. We're not pretending knowing, not pretending to be wise, we are actually knowing, which takes work. We're not cosplaying as a doctor. We actually go to medical school, kind of thing. So what? Well, so that's Meno. And that's us. Not all the time, but sometimes we will find ourselves shifting into a certain mask, which is an imitation of a way of being that we think means to be knowing. We think represents what it means to be knowing. All of a sudden, you're very certain and you're very angry, and I'll fight you if you disagree with me on this, that kind of thing. To ourselves, to others, to our loved ones. On comedy TV shows, if one of these reporters show up and put a microphone in your face. So when can we recognize when we are being Meno, acting as if we know something that we don't, which could be very harmful? And how do we shift from Meno into Socrates? What is Socrates doing that's different? And we've seen Meno, not only does he not know the true definition of virtue, he doesn't know how to come to definitions. And that's what we're learning here. In the dialectic, we are learning how to go to definitions. We're no longer pointing to things we like, and then use the word, this is good, this is what it means to be respectful, or other universalization words. This is appropriate, this is what it means to be American, this is what it means to be appropriate or good or respectful. These words that tend to universalize our personal preferences. We're not doing that. We're actually getting to a definition. From many examples of things to the thing itself. From the adjectives to the noun. Not beautiful things, beauty itself. Not examples of virtue, adjectives, but virtue itself, the noun. And in the Greek, we have the word self that points to the thing itself. And one of the reasons why what we are doing here is so important is this word self, altos, has not been translated up until now. So at the time of recording, if you have been studying philosophy, almost certainly you have been taught in a similar way to Meno. Because the texts that you have been reading have been mistranslating it. And thankfully, we have the Balboa translation. Which is a best translation because it actually has the Greek underneath so we can see it for ourselves. We don't have to believe others. We can recognize for ourselves. Belief and recognition, the two key terms in where we are in the text. But also it has the actual translations of the key words that have been mistranslated for centuries. Like altos, self. So beauty itself. The noun, the thing that, as we've seen about virtue, exists as an eidos in being, just like virtue exists as an eidos in being. Take away that word, then you take away metaphysics, you take away the essence of philosophy. It's absurd. But it's okay, we can reawaken it, that's the channel. So, why is that important? Well, that's what we need to get to a noun, to get to a definition or a principle. The thing that people are cosplaying about. Oh yes, my preferences are principles. Not only do I like doing this, it's the right thing to do and everyone should do it. But what is the principle? Where do they exist? Well, if it's a principle, it has to be universally true, which means it's not a physical thing. It has to be a law that applies to all physical things, meaning it's a metaphysical thing, beyond physical or before physical. That's the realm of being. Now, the aspects of the realm of being are the eidos, sometimes mistranslated as idea, concept, or form. One of the great betrayals to philosophy. So what? Also, this is important because if we want to define something, we can't point to physical expressions, we have to point to the principle or the eidos. And Meno has said in the text, I don't even know how to do that. I don't know your strange method of coming to a oneness from the many. Now, by the way, coming to a oneness from the many, that's called understanding. And we can look at how children learn to understand. They'll point to something and they'll say, what's that? And they'll say, well, that's a duck. And they have to find the many things that come together as a oneness to be a duck. Oh, it's got feathers. Oh, so they'll point to a pigeon and say duck. You go, no, that's not a duck. That's a pigeon. They go, oh, okay. They didn't come to a correct oneness. And they'll slowly learn how to differentiate between the different parts. And then once they have the correct defining parts, they'll bring it together to a oneness. They'll give it a word. They'll give it a name. That's a duck. And now it's a principle that they can carry with them. It's a definition. So they'll see a new duck a week later that they've never seen before, but they'll be able to point to it. And if they have that definition, they'll say duck. Well, how did you know that? You've never seen that before. Because I have brought to a oneness the many. I have come to a definition. So what we are learning here is how to do that, because Meno doesn't know how to do that. We are not taught how to do that. And we need to. Again, for one reason, because this is a cause for political conflict, human conflict within the world. People are arguing about their personal preferences, and what ends up happening, the people with the most guns or the most influence on the media to manipulate personal opinions wins. So the worst kinds of people end up in power fighting against others. But if we know the method from how to go from the many different opinions to the one understanding, the truth, the principle about what's just, about what's good, about how to treat ourselves and others, then there's no need for conflict. In fact, conflict will be seen as irrational and an example of a problem that you can equally apply the dialectic to two and to discover, oh, what was the cause of this false definition? So everything that is currently the cause of extreme conflict and inequality and genocide and murder and so on can be a gift. They can all not be causes of suffering and problems, but causes of insight and seen as gifts. Because it's either a true definition that we can learn more about, or if it's one that blocks us coming to a mutual understanding based on the principles that exist in being, then it's a gift that can show us where we are blocked. What's a false definition about goodness, truth, self that we are carrying, that we don't suspect, that we are here to discover. Because as human beings, as we are seeing time and time again, we are here for two reasons: purification and perfection. Those are Socrates' words. Now, what does that mean? To purify the false beliefs we carry about self and reality that we all gain, that keep us enslaved or chained to our ignorance, chained to fate. If you think you're rubbish and no one likes you, then your life will play that out over and over again, confirming, being a self-fulfilling prophecy. And you will eventually, that will become your mask, your identity, your persona. You are in a dialectic with a false image of self and reality. That's fate. We are here to purify ourselves from that because it's false. You don't suck. Reality doesn't suck. Also, to be able to purify yourself from that gives you a freedom to actually find out what self and reality is. That's perfection. We are here to learn and unlearn what's false. Seems very simple, and the metaphor we use in this channel sometimes is, if you want to be a vet, you have to actually learn how animal health works. But you also have to unlearn the false beliefs you got from childhood, that cats marry dogs, and that's how you give. And then when they have boy babies, that they're dogs, and when they have girl babies, they're cats. Now that's a silly belief that some children may have, but you can't simultaneously hold that false belief about animals and become a vet. So too, it's a metaphor, you can't simultaneously hold false beliefs about self and reality while mastering the truth about self and reality. That's why we have to do midwifery to give birth to those false beliefs, and Platonic philosophy to actually understand what self and reality is. Now, what's really wonderful is the same method is used for both. It's called the dialectic. This is what Meno never learned. This is what Socrates is calling a comedic tragedy. He went to all this schooling and praised by his family and his culture, and he's walked away with more entrenched in his pathologos, in his false beliefs about self and reality. By the way, that's our education system, believe it or not. We don't have to believe it. The more you learn about the dialectic, the more we understand the text, you can apply it for yourself and see whether or not it's true. Do we go to school to do those two things? Or do we end up going to schools that confirm the beliefs that we carry in our culture about what's good and what isn't? So we are not bound by that. We have the opportunity to reawaken philosophy, reawaken the dialectic, and do what we're here to do, whether or not the world comes along. So that's where we are in the text. To reiterate, Meno thought he knew, still thinks he knows, even though he has recognized he doesn't know how to come to definitions, how to go from the many to a one. He doesn't know the dialectic. So that's key because we are learning it. Now, one of the questions is, how come Socrates hasn't just outlined it? Because wouldn't that be a way of teaching the dialectic? Well, our question for this text is not only what is the excellence of the soul, but whether or not it can be taught. Maybe there's a key reason why he's not just telling us. Why we have to be excited about it and have fun reading the text and put on our Sherlock Holmes hats and look for questions and be puzzled and talk with our friends and join this community. Maybe there's a reason why we have to learn it and it can't be taught. But he's giving us a lot of material to do that learning. And one of the many ways we see the dialectic is within the structure of the text itself. So the first 10 pages seems to be a definition of virtue. Definition being, just a reiteration, the dialectic only has 4 parts. Definition, demonstration, division, and synthesis, and conclusion. And conclusion has 2 aspects to it, synthesis and analysis. So we are hypothesizing that the first 10 pages was a definition of virtue, and within the definition, he gave a dialectic, a definition dialectic, he gave a demonstration dialectic. What is virtue itself? It's an eidos in being that we keep our eye on when we do dialectics. So already virtue is intimately tied with the dialectic. Then he says, well, how does virtue function? We manage ourselves in a temperate and just way, using the dialectic, which is more able to reach the good and our success. And if we're doing that at all times, trying our best to use the dialectic at all times, we are always going to be just and never unjust. Division, he gave examples of the dialectic used in geometry, the dialectic used in shape, the dialectic used in color, the dialectic used in reference to being, the dialectic used in reference to physical things. And Meno liked the physical things, and we had a laugh at that. Because if you're attracted to physical things and not the realm of being, then you're not going to come to a definition, and you're not doing philosophy. Philosophy is different from scientific beliefs about the physical world. Let's change my lighting a little bit. All right, let's try that light. I need to get better lighting and a better camera. Okay, maybe when this channel gets very successful and everyone starts realizing the benefits of the dialectic and philosophy and understanding, the love of understanding, then people can donate and I'll upgrade my lights and my camera and things. So, division, and then from that division, we bring all those divisions together. That was our job. So again, we're not being told, we're being given the conditions for learning. And then when we can bring it together, we have a paradigm. So that synthesis, bringing it together, then you take that synthesis and you apply it back to the definition. What was that definition? What is virtue? So we have a paradigm of the dialectic that is tied to virtue. So that was the first 10 pages. So we had at least 4 different dialectics, or we had the parts of the dialectic, and within each of these parts, within the definition, he used DDDAS or DDDC. So it's dialectics within dialectics. Isn't that fascinating? Okay, so we are hypothesizing. Again, it's an if, which means it's a question, which means we're open and curious and puzzled, and we're carrying it. And we can carry many ifs. In other words, we're not just pretending we know. We're not acting certain. Even if people call you an alpha or call you a knower or give you money, if you act like you know stuff and cosplay the knower, that's Meno. We're not doing that. We are curious. We are curious. These are all question marks. And we can carry many hypotheses to see what pans out. One of those hypotheses is page 10. We're in the demonstration section. Is this a demonstration of that paradigm? Because Socrates says, now that you have the paradigm for how to think, how to reason, how to come to understanding, how to come to definitions, and also how to awaken spiritually, because he did say that this is the initiation into the mystical experience. Philosophy isn't just physical, it's also the spiritual method. And if it's the paradigm not just of understanding, if it's the paradigm of understanding, you can use it to judge all other people's understanding. That's important because we haven't written it out on the board yet. But something that's fundamental to philosophy is understanding people. Because if you do not judge people and arguments, you will be tricked or conned. And Socrates says this is why philosophy isn't about belief. Even if you're believing Socrates, believing true things about reality, it's not good enough. Because someone else will come along with a belief that will sound true, that might resonate with your upbringing, and then you'll be thrown into a tiz. Oh my God, I don't know what to believe anymore. Maybe that stuff from Socrates is wrong. And Socrates says this is the worst condition of the soul we have to be on our greatest guard against, because if you blame the logos, if you blame the understandable and knowable spiritual nature of reality itself, because you got tricked, instead of your lack of the art, then that's the greatest defect of the soul, because you will never reach truth. It's not because reality is bad or understanding is bad, because someone who should have had your best interests didn't or betrayed you. It's because you failed to judge them. And how do we judge? What's the model for judgment? Well, here we have our ladder. Now, our ladder has 2 rails. 2 rails. One is understanding. And one is state of mind. State of mind. And on that, there are levels. There are various different, let's use the straight line to make straight lines. There is a hierarchical development of understanding that you can have. someone can have an understanding about themselves and the world. Oh, here we go. Right, a quote. So we're going to take a pause to address this quote because there's another one. This is one of the other great betrayals against philosophy. This is one of the great dangers. The quote is a misquote from Socrates. Thank you for sharing it in the chat. The only thing I know is I know nothing. That is absolutely not what was said. That's how it's mistranslated to justify the idea that there is no knowing, because even Socrates says he knows nothing. That's bullshit. He didn't say that. There are several things that he says he does know, but the quote is, I am wisest in Athens because... Now, this was in response to the oracle at Delphi. His friends asked the oracle at Delphi, is Socrates the wisest man in Athens? Socrates, and the oracle said, yeah, he is. Socrates is like, what? I don't know. Which again, he is going against the gods. So goes on a quest to see if that's true by asking people who claim to know things like Meno, like Meno's teacher Gorgias, these people who are cosplaying as knowers, claiming to know things, do they actually know what they're talking about? And he found something interesting. Specifically, here's the quote. See if you can unpack it. I am wisest in Athens because, not that I know nothing, but I don't think I know something that is not knowable. I am not convinced I know something that is not knowable, which tells you something. It means he has an awareness of what is the object of knowing, what is knowable. And he has found that the people he talks to, not only do they don't know what they're talking about, they don't actually know what is the object of knowledge. What is something you can absolutely know, not as an opinion, not as a belief, not as a sense perception of the physical world. Oh, look, that person does that, that person does that. That's not a definition. These are examples. So if he is wisest because he is not going to be convinced he knows something he doesn't, that's the quote. I'm wisest because I'm not convinced I know something I don't. That means he has an idea of what knowing is, and specifically what is the object of knowing. For example, can you know how many baked beans there are in China? Is that an object of knowledge? Now, this is important because this is really the definition of philosophy, because philosophy isn't understanding the physical world, it's understanding being. So we give it the word dianoia, that's the Greek. Understanding is the English translation. So we have to use the word dianoia, because dianoia is understanding the realm of being, which is where principles exist. So if we want to define things or have definitions of what virtue is or what goodness is, they have to not just be physical examples which can change, because the physical world is in the world of being, not the world of becoming, which is our physical world. Becoming, which is the physical. So if people are pointing to the physical world of becoming and say, that's what I know, Socrates says, well, of course, you're not right. That's what makes me wiser. I'm not going to mistake an object of knowing, which is a state of mind called nous. Nous is knowing the world of being. I'm not going to mistake this for this. So Socrates does know what knowing is. And there's many examples of him experiencing it. And there are several examples in the text of him saying, yeah, I do know this. I know about love. I know about beauty. I know about midwifery. So he doesn't know nothing. He says, I'm not going to be misled to think that this stuff is knowable when I know this stuff is knowable. That's the quote. Now, we can ask the question, why is it mistranslated? Well, If you are the sort of person like Meno, or like the current experts of philosophy, or the current politicians who claim they know, then they realize they don't have principles. They just have preferences. I like this in the physical world, so this is what's right. I like Kant's opinion. I like Hegel's opinion. Now, all of that, Socrates calls this philodoxia, which means love of opinions. Socrates warned us 2,000 years ago that these are the people who claim to be philosophers. He called them bald-headed tinkerers. They don't like their old job, so they pretend to be philosophers, and they take their personal opinions and they say that's what philosophy is. That's literally what we do now. So what we are doing instead is recognizing that ain't philosophy, pal. Philosophy is actually understanding the truth, not opinions, because opinions can be bogus. That's distinguishing dianoia from understanding, and nous, that's knowing. So the word from the quote is nous, which applies to being. That's the difference. And that's where we are in the Meno as well. So Meno doesn't know how to move from the world of becoming to the realm of being. He can only list things he likes. He likes harming his enemies. He likes being good to his friends. He doesn't like getting punished. So he says that's what virtue is. And Socrates says that's a swarm of bees. There's many examples. I asked for a definition. I asked for one definition of virtue, not many things you like. And Meno said two things. Number one, I have no idea what this is. And Socrates said, yeah, that's the tragedy of your education. Real education is learning this and experiencing it. And he said, not only do I not know how to come to definitions or principles in the realm of being, that's philosophy. Nous and dianoia are both about being. Socrates is very clear about this. He said in the Phaedo, he talks about studying with regular teachers, and like we would call them scientists, and they only use physical examples of causes. What's the cause of things? Oh, your muscles, your sinews. Physical things cause you. And Socrates is like, hang on a second. If my mind didn't have an idea of what's good or what's more beautiful, then my bones and sinews would be sinewing and boning themselves elsewhere. In other words, my mind is a big cause of why I do things. Why are we not studying the mind? So he had to say, well, that's why I had to go away and invent philosophy. So that's where Meno is. And that's where we start as human beings. We start in the physical world. Something in us has to be drawn to either understanding, how do we go from the many to the one, which is understanding, how do we get definitions? Because there's one, beauty itself can't change, even though physical things can. Just because a physical person becomes less beautiful, does that mean beauty itself as a idea becomes less beautiful? Of course not. That would be absurd. Therefore, beauty itself has to have an existence prior to the physical world that isn't affected by whether or not there are 20 beautiful people or 100 beautiful people. Okay, we start here. So something about understanding, or we have been lucky enough or fortunate enough to have a state of mind of a non-physical world. That's called yoga. That's the spiritual traditions. All yogas are in some way a method of separating your soul from your physical senses to experience a different level of reality. And when people experience that, they go, oh my God, I can't believe I was asleep to this world being not existing, or I thought that this physical world was real when it was more like a dream. So we call that enlightenment. So whether it's somebody who's had an experience of being or someone who loves understanding, something has to awaken you to this quest to either come to definitions in understanding, to actually understand things, because you realize the conflict you have within yourself and the conflict humans have with each other is all based on not being able to come to a mutual understanding, not even knowing the principles of understanding, the dialectic, or you've had an experience and you realize all spiritual traditions that may or may not be in conflict are all various ways of providing a method for an experience of it. But in philosophy, we have both nous and dianoia. So back in the chat. Okay, some quote from something else that's not related to philosophy. You have material and spiritual energies pulling you out of the middle way. Again, that's just a belief. If somebody is aware of that belief, they might agree with it or not. Our job is, how can we present things that may or not be true and actually reason it through to see whether it is true? You can quote something from the middle way, someone can quote something from a Taoist book, someone can quote something from a Buddhist book, but who cares? You're not talking with each other, you're talking at each other. How can you, wherever you come from, follow steps of reason rationally through some sort of model or paradigm to come to mutual understanding? Otherwise, you ever met a Taoist try and talk to a Buddhist? It's a waste of time. They have a different language. They don't know how to communicate. And they're very tied to their personal beliefs. But we're not interested in beliefs. We're interested in understanding. Now, that's not to say it's not right. But how can we communicate it in a way that we can all come to mutual understanding and don't have to just pick teams? That's what we're learning here. Because Socrates is from a different team than Meno. When Meno said, you know what I think virtue is? Being good to your friends and harming your enemies and getting away with it. Someone who has the same belief will go, yeah, I'm with you. Right? And they'll both vote Republican. But if someone has a different belief, what's going to happen? Well, I have a different belief. Okay, who cares? And they walk away. Socrates is like, no, let's actually... By the way, I don't know what virtue is. I'm not going to start from a position of acting like I know, but let's see if we can reason together in a friendly way through conversation, using our mind in the best way possible to come to a true understanding of, and hopefully direct experience of, what virtue is in the realm of being. And our question is that virtue? Is that way of spending our time with people, meeting them where they're at, engaged in a reflective conversation, step by step, to come to mutual understanding, using the paradigm of understanding itself, using the dialectic, the paradigm of all paradigms? Is that the best thing we can do while we're here? If so, is that virtue? That's a question. Right, Alan Watts. Yeah, great. I'm glad that you like Alan Watts. By the way, Alan Watts was best friends with a guy named Pierre Grimes. And Pierre Grimes wrote, this is the guy there, Pierre Grimes, best friends with Alan Watts. And he wrote this book, Philosophical Midwifery. Alan Watts has some introductions to some of Pierre Grimes' other books, but Philosophical Midwifery is the dialectic that we can apply to uncover our false beliefs that prevent us from doing this. Doing what? So there is a ladder of development of understanding and states of mind, or your highest vision, that we are here to climb to our highest goals. And this is where we have things like truth. Truth being mind itself, or self and reality. This is our destiny. Destiny. And this path is called the Logos. This is the logos. Now, what does that mean? That means that all ways of understanding, there are some people, you might know them, they are nihilists. They think nothing exists. There is no meaning. There's not even no meaning. There's no actual anything. There's nothing. That's a way of understanding the world. But also, that way of understanding is accompanied by a state of mind. Depressed, empty, lonely. And you might have a conversation with that nihilist friend and say, well, actually, for us to have conversation and for me to even understand you, something has to exist. Even if we're just understanding your nihilist feelings, at least that exists. So maybe that's enough to bring them up from nihilism, the belief that there's nothing, to, well, okay, there is something, but it's all illusion. There's something, but it's all a con. And then you might be realizing, oh, actually, okay, there's something that exists, but it's just physical stuff. We are just billiard balls in space. It's just physical atoms. And even our mind is just physical chemicals and stuff like that. That's all called relativism. It's all relative. Or materialism. Materialism is just a physical world. Relativism might be a step higher. Even our language is just relative. There's no such thing as beauty itself. That's just a word we made up. And we all collectively agree on it. Okay? And then they might study some science, or maybe you have a conversation. Maybe you use the dialectic. So the dialectic is our way of climbing the ladder. And you say, well, and they realize, well, actually, there are some principles. 2 and 2 equals 4 forever. Gravity works everywhere, even on other planets. But these are just physical laws. So again, these are just levels of understanding. Let's give this a color. Let's give it... I'm running out of colors up here. This one? So these are levels of understanding that you can understand yourself. Each level of understanding and corresponding state of mind is understandable. Then you can go up to other levels where you think that there's a realm of being. Actually, you should make it green. Where you think, okay, for there to even be principles, there has to be a cause of these principles. So that has to have existed before the physical world. So there has to be a realm of being, but it has nothing to do with me. If God exists, then he wouldn't care about us. We are like ants. That's down here. That's called strict dualism. There's a distinction between being and us in the physical world, and never the twain shall meet. Now that's a different way of understanding self and reality that has a corresponding state of mind and level of experience of enlightenment. There's only a certain level of enlightenment or experience of self and reality that you can have with that understanding. And then you might think, well, okay, there is a higher reality. There is a God or a realm of being, but the best we can get to it is being in a group, being in a team, and everyone praying or everyone chanting or everyone singing. That feeling of being in a group is a kind of oneness that I feel greater than my individual self. But that's as far as I can go. Okay, notice these are all ways of bringing the many into the one. Bringing many into oneness, right? So you can say this ladder is a ladder that shows you what is your highest vision or experience and understanding of oneness. Do you think oneness doesn't exist? Well, you're a nihilist. Oneness exists, but it's just physical? Well, you're a materialist. Oneness exists, but it's just a made-up concept? Well, you're a relativist. Oneness exists as a principle? Well, you're a scientist. And so on and so on. But this level of oneness up here is being a part of a group. So we have religions in that group and family traditions, all that sort of thing. Group think. Now, above that is where you have the logos. So the logos is above that because the logos is a way of that being communicates to us. That's what we're discovering. If Socrates is communicating to Meno, who's down here, using the logos, he must be doing so because the logos is a way of understanding that can be experienced for yourself. So we'll say state of mind or experience. So these are all the yogas, enlightenment experiences. You can help someone climb the ladder to greater understanding and greater experiences. Notice not belief, but understanding. Not having to believe some other joker with a funny hat, but actually experiencing it for yourself. Going to the party itself, not just hearing about how great the party is. Oh, heaven's great. Oh, enlightenment's wonderful. Oh, perfect beauty is bliss. Well, that's great, but can I go to the party? That's the ladder. There are 2 rungs. Experiencing it for yourself, going to the party yourself, and understanding as, number 1, our method for climbing, but also our way of making sense of it while we're there. Just because you've had an experience doesn't mean you understand it, but also integrating it. Can you use it? Can you talk about the logos? Can you talk about what you experienced? That's the logos. And that's the method that we're learning called the dialectic, because Socrates is taking Meno, who's down here, he's engaged with him in a certain kind of way that he has to think that he has the possibility of climbing this ladder. Now, our question is, how well does Meno do? How well can he climb the ladder? How well can he go from beliefs and opinions in the physical world to truth and understanding in the being world? Including, by the way, if you are engaged in a friendly, reasoned conversation, following the structure of the dialectic, not interested in beliefs and opinions, but in truth and understanding, with a single focus on your topic, which exists in being, like virtue in this text, then you are focused on a single topic, you've got an open, curious mind, you are using the highest vision or imagination you have. Vision if you've had the experience, imagination if you haven't yet. Systematically, with the highest use of your understanding, these are all formally the conditions for meditation. Other meditations might pick 1 or 2. Maybe they have sustained focus, but they don't have understanding. Right? Maybe they have an open, curious mind because they give you a koan. What is the sound of one hand clapping? Oh, now I'm really curious because that's a question that I can't solve because it's a nonsense question. There is no answer. The whole point is to keep you open and curious. So there you have a focused concentration and an open, curious mind, but you don't have the logos. So all yogas or spiritual traditions pick pieces, but what we are learning is the model, the paradigm. What would be the ultimate or the model of spiritual yoga? But not just spiritual yoga, it would also be the model of understanding. It would also be the model for understanding not just ways of thinking, but experiences. If the unfolding of reality or a creation follows the same structure, then if there's an unfolding from self and reality into the physical world through an understandable pattern, then what we're learning in the dialectic is also the paradigm for creation. If we can use it like Socrates is with Meno and learn to use it to talk to ourselves in a good, kind, beneficial way and talk to our friends over coffee. When I say coffee, we have a sip of coffee. That's a fun game that we play here. We like to have fun and we play that fun game. Right? If it's a way of talking with your friends or yourself, that can benefit them, then it's also the paradigm for art. So the dialectic is something we are spending time learning in this channel and in this text, that Socrates is going to great lengths to give us the clues to figure out, because it seems to be the paradigm of all paradigms. If you want to learn music, you're going to be following the dialectic. I teach music. It's the paradigm for all understanding. It's the paradigm for all spiritual traditions. It would be the model for all political systems, but it's also the paradigm for creation, and it's the paradigm for art, how to artfully use a skill based on a knowledge with understanding to benefit your patient. That's an art. So that's what we're learning here. So checking back in with the chat. The simple act of, okay, back to Alan Watts, power of thoughts and words. Right, yes, blooming, nurturing, right. How do you nurture yourself? If you ever make a mistake, do you beat yourself up? Is that nurturing? Or maybe there's a way of relating to yourself that's friendly, rational, and beneficial. That's the dialectic. So you can, yes, you're not hating yourself or ignoring your problems, but helping them bloom. Now, we are mentioning problems. What does that mean? That means we also have the shadow. We have the shadow of the shadow of the logos. Notice it doesn't go up, it stays flat on the ground. Why? Because, let's give it some rungs. Because the logos casts a shadow. This is the idea of metaphor, as above, so below. Just as we can say that the dialectic is the paradigm for creation, it's also the paradigm that we can create well. If we want to create good art or good stories or good films or good video games or good music, as above, so below, that allows us to use metaphors. Because metaphors takes principles of one level and applies it to a higher level. As a shepherd takes care of his sheep, so too can you understand how a king should care for his people. So this is the opposite of destiny. It is fate. We have states of mind or experiences that are negative, and we have a kind of understanding or words that's called the pathologos. Pathologos, the sick logos. You might be able to recognize it as the negative self-talk that tells you about self and reality, not in terms of truth and being, and up here, but the running out of space, but the false image. Yeah, I'm running out of space down there. Okay, let's try that again. False image, that kind of fits, of self and reality. Your ego or your persona. And we spend our life in a kind of dialectic with it, because that unsuspected false belief or false image of ourself and reality, it starts as a false belief that we gain from childhood. We spend our life acting as though it's true. We ingrain it into our way of thinking. It has a way of talking, way of acting, a mask that we have, a way of relating to ourselves and the world through. So what starts as a false belief, our life engages in a conversation with it until we identify with it. We become convinced that we are this negative self-image. That's our life. And what does it mean? It means we stay stuck on a train tracks. Notice the ladder looks like train tracks when it's on the ground. Doesn't go anywhere. You're propelling towards the repeating cycles of failure. Notice negative states of mind on this level and negative self-talk that leads to, let's give it here, repeating cycles of failure. Failure to reach your most meaningful goals. That's called fate. Now, what we are learning is how to understand the cause of our problems, the cause of us being on the train track of fate. And it's simply the shadow of the logos. So everything we learn about the logos, not only are we learning about our destiny and how to reach our highest goals, to understand and experience the highest dimensions of self and reality and integrate it into our way of being so we can use it as an art, the same way Socrates is doing here. So Socrates is our model. He's using it as an art, but we can also use it as a metaphor to say, well, okay, if this is what's true, what does that tell us about its shadow? Right? If there are levels of states of experience or happiness, you might start here, nihilism, you're depressed, down at the bottom of that ladder. So depressed state of mind, depressed understanding. And then you think, well, okay, only physical things. It's kind of meaningless. You're just atoms and nothing more, space dust. That's a certain state of mind. But then you realize, well, okay, there are some things we can agree on. So, I can have shared opinions, and that I feel like a little bit better. So we can have like sadness and then happiness, and then we start having like states of bliss, and then states, well, not bliss yet, but insights, flow states, non-physical experiences outside of your body, astral travel and all that. And then not just outside your body, but outside the physical world, you're in the realm of being now. But then there are levels of experiencing the realm of being. Do you experience it as beauty itself? Maybe you experience it as justice, which might be a bit higher. Because, do you even notice that some things that are beautiful aren't always good in the physical world? So which is higher, goodness or beauty? These are questions that we ask. There are depths. By the way, how high is the logos? If the logos is the system for everything, the structure of understanding everything, the model of all spirituality, the model of all understanding, the model of all growth, the model of art, then it might be quite high up in the realm of being. Okay, that's one of the questions we have in philosophy. In the realm of being, all of these eidos or aspects, how do they rank? What causes what? Because if you do get into this experience, can you go into it with depth? That's why we're learning. That's why we're not trying to get into it by sitting under a waterfall for 40 years and chanting, which can work sometimes if you're lucky. We're using understanding as our yoga or method. So we're developing understanding and states of mind, because human beings have both. So that when we do reach it, we can use that understanding to go, oh, I know what I'm experiencing. I'm not freaking out. Or I'm not misunderstanding this. Oh, this is really beautiful. This must be Xenu, because I grew up in Scientology and that told me that Xenu is beauty. Well, that's not understanding. That's a belief that you got from your upbringing. So you're not misrepresenting it. You're not getting freaked out. But also you can ask questions, do the dialectic, say, what's the cause of beauty? Oh, what's the cause of that? What's the cause of that? And go into that experience. Notice this isn't a place. It's not a space and time thing. You don't have to get on a train to go into that experience in greater depth. It's a state of consciousness or mind. So the way you train your mind, how do you think? How do you reason? How do you understand? That's your train. We're not going to use train. That's your ticket, your plane ticket, to be able to go into it in greater depth. Then, of course, when we get to the whole of being, everything all at once, or infinity and oneness at once, we might even ask the question, what's the cause of that? And that has the opportunity, or has the possibility of taking us from being to the self. What we call the one self, or the good self. But notice, these are all ways of bringing many into the oneness. How do you make sense of your world? Nihilism? And how do you make sense of all your experiences? Depression? Your state of mind is an experience of the oneness. Your understanding, everything is meaningless, it's nihilism, is a way of bringing into a oneness understanding the many things that you've been thinking about. So these, you could say, this ladder is different levels of oneness, even up here at the level of group thinking or religious thinking. You are a part of a oneness when you are at church singing as a group. Everything is bigger than me. Look at this wonderful group I'm in, right? That's the appeal of Trumpism. You don't have to be clever. You just have to be angry and racist or whatever. And you have to embrace your false ideas of self and reality. But you can be a part of a group. You get to wear the American flag hats and the American flag shirts, and you get to chant, and you feel like you're a part of something greater than yourself. That's a kind of oneness, greater than yourself. But it's not the highest. In fact, Trumpism is down here because religion is a oneness in relation to a realm of being. They think there is something non-physical, usually. Right? So, that's important because we were talking about judging. So we're going to move some things around here a little bit. So why are we talking about this now? Judgment. When we are betrayed, when we find that certain beliefs are not true, when we find that people who should have cared about us we're not actually acting for our best interests. Are we going to blame the logos, or are we going to blame our lack of the art of the logos? Socrates says it's the art. You have to develop the art. So the art would be a way of judging where someone is at and where they are stuck. So these are really the two questions that you can ask someone. Where are you at, or where are you stuck? Okay, let's give this a different color. Let's give this blue. That'll do. Okay, where are you at, or where are you stuck? So how far are you at in terms of your development up the ladder of the logos towards destiny, your highest experiences of self and reality, not just experiences, but understanding, not just experiences and understanding, but integration into your way of being so that you can take it with you, even in your enlightenment experiences, even after death. So how far are you up? But also, you can be blocked. The higher you are seeking your most meaningful goals, the louder the pathologos voice can be to say, give up. You're not good enough. Go do something else. Go make money, or go get Instagram famous, or something like that. Or your mum and dad were right when they said that you're not smart enough to whatever. So the higher you go up towards your goals, the more likely you are to trigger your pathologos, false image and false beliefs about yourself. That's your block. So everyone is at some level. Everyone, if you're a human being, you get this. And you forget this. So you get this and you forget this. You get and forget. So the full spiritual tradition, or the full personal development tradition, would involve a method of uncovering and purifying our false idea, the shadow of truth and self and reality. How do we uncover what we are unsuspectingly carrying to remove that? because even different gurus who've reached different levels of enlightenment haven't removed their problems. That's why we have these archetypes in culture and history and film and anime of the pervy sage. He's a sage, he's reached some experience, but without actually applying the dialectic to uncovering his false beliefs, he still has problems. So he's a sexual deviant while also being a sage. Or he's a drunken sage. He still has his alcohol problem. So Naruto, Dragon Ball Z, lots and lots and lots. They have these archetypes. Why? Because these stories come from cultures that have as their system not the logos. They don't have the complete system. They pick a part without the other part. So what? So we are in philosophy because we are learning the paradigm, and the paradigm is the dialectic or the paradigm. Paradigm is how it's spelled. Paradigm means like the blueprints or the model. Because the dialectic is applied to both. Socrates in the Meno that we're reading now is using the dialectic to help Meno go from his ignorance about virtue and see if he can climb the ladder. That's what we're reading. So we are at some level, so we want to be Meno and see if we can listen to Socrates, follow along, see if it makes sense, see if we agree or disagree like Meno, and can we learn? Also, that's somebody who's climbing the ladder up. Also, we have Socrates, someone who has climbed the ladder, has experienced nous. So this idea that Socrates says, I know nothing is incorrect. It's a mistranslation by people who want to reject that because they don't want to do the work of this. They don't want to do the work of developing dianoia, which is understanding being. They don't want to actually do this at all times as a meditation so they can have the experience of being. That's the nous, the state of mind or the experience of being. They don't want to do that. They just want to be experts. They want to cosplay, just like the Trump supporters. They want to, oh, these are what we should do with immigration. This is what we should do with the DEC and DIC and stuff. They know nothing about those things. This is Fauci should do about medicine. They have no idea. They don't want to do the work, but they want to cosplay. They want to be the knower. The soul has a desire to be knowing. That's what propels us along this journey. But it's also the urge to imitate is even stronger than our desire for truth. Meaning, what they are cosplaying is an image of what it means to be knowing, which happens to be similar to what Trump is doing. Someone who is stupid, loud, arrogant, mean, has a lot of problems, but still acts like he knows stuff. That's what they want. Okay, so any sort of personal development has to include the surfacing of this, the cause of our problems, and the way of addressing it with the dialectic to free ourselves from it. And it also has to include the dialectic applied to the logos to understand all levels of development. Because if you meet someone at here, you need to help them get to here. But if you meet someone at here, you have to get to here. It's no use just being a Taoist and only recognizing someone here because that's the only state of enlightenment they are familiar with. So that saying, a Taoist and a Buddhist cross themselves on a path, pass each other on a path, and they don't recognize each other. What does that mean? It means Taoists could be here, Buddhists could be here, but unless they know the model, you won't be able to recognize where people are at. Meaning you can't function with it as an art. A doctor has to not just heal, I don't know, a sore elbow, he has to be able to heal a sore finger. He has to have the paradigm of the healthy body to help anyone who walks into his office. That's what we're learning here. So we have Meno as someone who is climbing the ladder up, and we have Socrates as someone who's climbed the ladder and has integrated it and is going down to help others up the ladder. This is central. And if you are interested in Buddhism, there is something called the 10 ox herding pictures, which are depictions of various levels of enlightenment, using a metaphor of a man finding an ox. He starts by seeing footprints of an ox and thinks, oh, is there an ox that I can find? And then he goes to look for the ox, and then he finds the ox, and then he tames the ox, and then he rides the ox. And then all of a sudden there is no ox. And then there is no ox or himself. And then he's reached a level of enlightenment where he has completed his work. He's tamed the ox. The ox is, he no longer needs the whip or the saddle. And he's depicted as a man sitting alone in his house, and his whip and saddle are on the wall. So he's done his work, but he's in his house. The 10th ox herding picture is the same man in the marketplace, talking with prostitutes and fishmongers. Prostitutes, you know what profession they're in, and fishmongers, people who kill for a living. So even the worst people down here, the 10th ox herding man in Buddhism is able to go down and talk to them in a way that can benefit them. Now, we're doing a similar thing, but with the logos, actually understanding how to do that. So that would be like Socrates, someone who has come down and he's dealing with a Meno guy, a trumpist. Us. Now, okay, we're probably, not all of us are Trump supporters, whatever, but we have our own false beliefs that we are attracted towards people who cosplay knowing in that same way. We are Menos. We're at some level. We're all different levels of expression of the logos as human beings, and we're all on this journey upwards. So we read by relating to Meno because we're climbing, but also we're trying to understand Socrates because that's our goal. That's our destiny. To be someone who has climbed the ladder with understanding, no belief. Belief is this realm. Belief keeps you stuck. There's no progression of a belief. If this is the belief, hey, just believe this, and you get to go to the church picnics, then you can say, well, can I add something to that belief? No, it was written in stone 15 years ago, or 2,000 years ago. And you have to, there's no development, there's no growth. Also, belief means to believe somebody else. So you're stuck based as a slave on somebody else, and there's no room for development. That's imitation. So same, if it's the paradigm for learning anything, it's the same thing for anything. If you are becoming a mechanic, you don't stay imitating. If you're an apprentice, the mechanic you're learning from, you have to understand how the engine works for yourself and experience putting it together for yourself. If you're an apprentice mechanic and your master is saying, oh, just believe me, you're getting conned, because you'll never be able to open your own shop, because every time somebody comes in with some problem, they've got some problem with their car and their car is at some level of excellence, you won't be able to understand it or function with it. You have to go running to your master. So anybody, anywhere who is saying, hey, let me give you advice, which is another word of saying, hey, let me give you my beliefs. Let me tell you my opinion. Let me share some gossip. Or let me repeat the beliefs you already hold to make you feel like you're actually high up that ladder. Right-wing grifters, red pillars. They are conning you by definition, because belief keeps you stuck here. So what are we doing instead? Going from belief to understanding, confirming in our experience, integrating it into our own state of being, recognizing the self right at the top, and the logos, seeing how the logos permeates everything through the structure of the dialectic so that we can function with it artfully. Now, as we read, we are seeing someone who's done that, Socrates, and someone who is learning that, Meno. But our question is, how well does Meno do? How successful is Meno in letting go of his false beliefs and climbing that ladder? That's a question that we're only going to figure out as we read. And if he doesn't, if he gets stuck, where does he get stuck? And why does he get stuck? So if you imagine this as a graph, everyone is at some level of his development, but it also has some level of problem. They're going to be up here and up here, so you can put them here. This level of development, this level of problem. Maybe they're a guru and they're right up here, but they've got a huge problem, so they're up here on the graph. Maybe there's someone who is suffering from a little problem, but they're only a little way up the graph because the reason why their problem isn't really surfacing hard is because they've really abandoned their highest goals. They don't do much with their life, so they're only up here on the ladder, right down here. Or maybe one of the reasons why they're satisfied with a small goal is because their problem is so strong. So they're all the way down here. It's like a graph. What level? What level in this arc? That's judgment. Anyone who says don't think is conning you. Anyone who says just believe or have faith is conning you. Why? Because if you're not judging people where they're at and where they're stuck, you are leaving yourself open to be abused. Because someone who doesn't know anything right down the bottom and has a huge problem, if you're not judging them with your understanding, you can think this person down here, huge pathologos, no level of understanding. They can be your leader. They can wear the funny hat. They can be the chosen one of your cult. They can be the parent in your family that you think is all-knowing. If you are stuck at the level of belief, or you're listening to people who say, don't judge me, don't think for yourself, don't ask questions, that is called anti-logos. And they're only doing it because whether they know it or not, and usually they know that they're doing it, they don't know why they're doing it, they are setting you up to be abused and manipulated and conned. They are con artists. Now, hearing that, you can get angry, but I love my dear leader. And he says I have to have belief and faith. Okay, that means you are stuck here. Because you are learning the logos to be in this conversation, but you are stopping yourself because you have an image of your dear leader, parent, pope, preacher, pastor, founding father, whoever it is, if it's someone not you. So I want to believe them. Why? Are you not good enough? Your understanding is rubbish? You're going to settle for something crappier than understanding? They're preying on your false, diminished image of yourself to say, hey, just believe me. And this is a principle for all belief systems. So don't get precious about your own. By the way, if you find yourself getting precious about your own, not my belief system is the right one. Or getting angry, ooh, I don't like this way of thinking, you are a bad guy. Oh, if I was there, I'd punch you in the nose. If you start recognizing those states of mind or ways of thinking, these two negative rungs of the ladder, that's a clue. It's not real. It's not actually good to punch people in the nose or get angry at them for telling the truth. But it's a clue that if you have courage and virtue and wisdom and temperance, you can reflect on yourself. That's the game, self-reflection, ousia. And say, oh, it was when I reached this level of logos that my problem was triggered. Why was I able to learn and happy and curious until he said that? That's a clue about your problem. Write it down. write down the states of mind and words that come up that are angry and negative and want you to sabotage the logos, or throw into question the whole logos, or throw into question the philosophy and the midwifery. Because it's not true, but your mind up here is sending you information about this, so that if you are a good person, if you've got virtue, if you are the sort of person who is willing to reflect with the interest of understanding, even if your feelings say it's wrong, your feelings are tied to your prejudices or your pathologos. If you do have that level of integrity, then you are being sent a gift. A gift. Now, you can only get a gift if you know how to unpack it. You unpack the gift with self-reflection, that's called ousia in Greek, using the dialectic. And if you don't, and you are instead being blindly loyal to your pathologos, we have lots of names for that. It's pathologos. You could call it fascism, or in-group, out-group mentality, or teams thinking, or group thinking, or fascism, or fundamentalism, lots of different words, but you are trying to be loyal to what's false because it's familiar, and you're not reflecting, you're not accepting the gift, you're not developing an understanding. You think you know it when you don't. We are learning how to do the opposite. We are learning how to be good. Now, our question is this virtue? Is it virtue? The dialectic applied to what's false, to purify, is the word from, let's write it on the board. Socrates uses the word, let's get some more space. In the Phaedo, Socrates talks about how philosophy has two parts: purification. So we can say we need to purify. Let's zoom in a bit. Move it over a little bit. We want to purify heal or purify ourselves from our fate and perfect ourselves towards our destiny. So that's what we're on. And so are we going to follow Meno for our journey up, and also look at how Socrates uses his art of the dialectic? So these are the judgments. Are they here? Are they here are they here? This is our judgments. Judge using the art. Judge using the art. So let's check in with Chatty Chat. Nurturing, yes. Yes, heroic. This is the hero's journey. All hero's journey in literature and games and stuff is taking bits and pieces of this paradigm and using metaphor or analogy to represent them in a story. Now, if we are not just playing the game, not just playing Dark Souls or whatever game we play, but we are doing the actual thing, then we are doing the real hero's journey. The paradigm of the hero's journey. Judge using the, notice capital word, the word the and not a, it's not an art, it's the art. It's the art of all arts, or the paradigm of arts. So yeah, the hero's journey is what we're on. Lifetimes may be wasted behind books and anti-social media while ignoring the life around us. Child does not learn calculus that he can throw a ball, he simply throws the ball. We want both. We don't want to be stuck just learning without ever experiencing the realm of being. That would be like academia. People who say, Parmenides, which is... Parmenides is a fantastic example of this ladder. Parmenides is when Socrates was young, he met Parmenides and he outlined this ladder in the book, the Parmenides. Some people say, academics will say, oh, it's just a logical exercise. You don't actually have to experience it. Likewise, people from Eastern traditions who reject understanding, reject the logos, say, oh no, there is no understanding, you just throw the ball. What happens if I don't know how to throw a ball? Just pray or meditate, I guess. Oh, I don't know. That's why they get stuck. There's no method. So often when you talk to a guru of those traditions, they'll say, shut up and get back on the mat. Same thing with Christianity and other. You ask a Catholic priest, what was God doing before he invented heaven and earth? He'll say, shut up. Say your prayers. Again, that's why we're not interested in believing other people. If that's their level of logos is really low, then let them go. Let them do whatever. Maybe ask them some questions. What would it be like to actually understand? So yeah, we want to learn how to throw a ball and also throw a ball. Understanding and experience. Destiny is the result of our work and the karmic toll. So karma is one of those words that's kind of like, everyone has their own different beliefs about what it means. Now, if we say karma is simply based on the word doing, then yeah, how well are you doing your job? How well are you doing the learning of the dialectic, applying it to the logos? That's what we do on this channel. That's why we read the Meno, because the Platonic texts give us the logos that we can apply our mind to figure out the dialectic. And the other series on our channel is Philosophical Midwifery, which is this. If that's your work, then you could say it's your karma. If you want to use that word. I try not to use fancy buzzwords because I don't like gatekeeping. Also, if people say, oh, karma, that reminds me of that belief to do with that group. No. Philosophy isn't about groups. It's everyone. You're in it anyway. Whether you like it or not, you are doing this and doing this. Only if you are not aware, you will probably give up on that and you will spend your life in fate. So I try not to use buzzwords like that. Now, some exceptions are dianoia and nous, because we literally don't have an English word. That means understanding the realm of being and the self. Because our English tradition is based in Aristotle. So after Socrates was Plato, he started the academy. After Plato was Aristotle. Aristotle was a dunce. He was very clever, but he couldn't cross this threshold. So he was kicked out of the academy, or he left the academy. Now we could ask the question, well, how come his teacher Plato didn't do philosophical midwifery to free Aristotle from his block that prevent him from going into the realm of being? Why did Aristotle stay focused on the physical world? And, well, that's an interesting question we can get into later. Nevertheless, our English language is stuck here. Our culture is stuck here. It's Latin, it's Roman. Romans see all of the things in being. We look for nouns, the beauty, the virtue, the definitions. The Latin tradition doesn't have a word for the. They can only look for a virtuous thing, a beautiful thing. These are the adjectives. So that's what we're doing. We're reawakening philosophy, reawakening our spiritual and intellectual heritage, the golden age, but it's also going from us to thus, or from adjectives to nouns, or from examples to definitions, or from opinions to truth. So that's why we have to use the word dianoia and nous, but every time we do, I try and explain it, because even though it used to be a special mystical tradition, there's no time for that anymore. Humans are at a level of technology where we can be a slave to our fate and our pathologos to the point where we have the technology to end our species. So if humanity is here for a reason, a good reason, if humanity is part of a greater destiny, we can't keep this as a mystical tradition. You could say, well, there's good reason why we keep it a mystical tradition. If we all have a blind loyalty to our beliefs, our beloved beliefs, our Buddhist beliefs, our Catholic beliefs, just our family beliefs, You grew up in Australian tradition, my Aussie beliefs. And if somebody challenges that, we get violent with them and we get angry with them because that's the power of our ignorance, then you would say it's very important to keep it a secret. And only the people who have shown a genuine interest in personal development, a genuine integrity in getting over their cosplaying as knowing, getting over their ignorance, only those people should be initiated and told about the story, told about the logos. Yes, that's true. That's why there are, in spiritual traditions, there's a back room where you have a dokusan, where you're meditating in the group, but you have some questions to ask the guru, but you have to go into a special back room because it can be dangerous, because that's the power of the pathologos. But the reason why we're not doing that anymore, and we're just telling the truth, is we don't have time for that stuff anymore. No gatekeeping. This is humans. This is Socrates' legacy. But even Socrates says, this isn't Socrates, this is the logos. It's easy to disagree with Socrates. Hard to disagree with truth. This is the human destiny. That's why we call it the destiny of man. So that's why I tend to stay away from words that are mysterious and try and make it simple so there's no gatekeeping. Okay. It's all one. Right. It's all one. Now we want to see the different ways. Is it all one in its nihilism? Like it's all one and that one is nothing? Is it all one but that one is physical? Is it all one but it's just an agreed upon? There's no real beauty, it's just an agreed upon concept. It's all one but it's just physical principles. It's all one but it's a metaphysical principle that we can't access. It's all one but it's a metaphysical principle that we can only pretend to access. And is it one that we can access in each moment? Or between the gap of each moment? Is that where one is? These are all different levels of one. What's your highest concept of one? What's your highest vision of one and your understanding of one? So a lot of people can say it's all one. We want to understand all the different levels of one, how you can rank them, how you can judge and rank them. Okay? What's their highest experience? What's their highest understanding? How can you go from one to another? How can you improve or benefit or grow? And what's at the top? What's the one self, or the self one, or one itself? That's the first hypothesis of Parmenides. Yeah. Also, what are the negatives ones that you are carrying? The one that you think reality is, but reality is evil and hates you. You need to get rid of that. Because if you have the possibility of leaving your body to experience reality as a oneness, but you are carrying a belief that reality is mean and cruel because that's the way you were taught by your family, then you might be afraid and you might say, no, not for me. I'm too scared. Or maybe you grew up in a family where they say, oh, spiritual experience is like Harry Potter. That's the devil. And the devil is tricking you. That's why you're not allowed to read Harry Potter in my house. Well, if you have the possibility for this insight or this enlightenment experience, but you are carrying that false belief down here, you can be afraid of it. You can have a bad trip. It can block you, and so on and so on. So what's the true hierarchy of ones, and what are the false or its shadow? As above, so below. Good questions, though. Oh, in the beginning was the Logos. Yes. I think the opening passage of John, in the actual ancient Greek, in the beginning was the Logos. Yes. So that's a good question. How high is the Logos? Now, after that, John quickly, so we could say, we can judge. So this is the New Testament, John. Maybe he has an experience that's quite high. Maybe he has an understanding that's quite high, but very quickly he gets onto his problem. Very quickly he gets into belief. So that happens. A lot of books start very promisingly, but then they hit their block and they go down. Socrates said, when I was curious about understanding the cause of why I'm here, I went to teachers And they're all talking about physical causes, what we call the Aristotelian causes, so right down here. But there was this one teacher who said, oh, by the way, mind is a cause. And I said, I was willing to follow him till the end of the earth. I was willing to do whatever he said, because I know myself that my mind is a cause. I think about things. I think what's the highest good up here. But very quickly he went down again. So Socrates had to go his own way to actually reflect on the causes in mind. Jacob's ladder scenario, okay. Maybe this is a Jacob's ladder scenario. Checking with the chatty chat. Sacred geometry, right. So sacred geometry is if what we're learning is a paradigm, now we are using it in the highest way to help a person like Meno climb this ladder. And the other highest way is to help someone uncover what prevents their climb. But it's a paradigm, meaning any intelligible system. Intelligible is a fancy word that means understandable and experienceable. So it's not just academic, it's not just spiritual, it's both. So any intelligible system that has a set of terms that can be understood, which means hierarchically arranging them, which means judging them. So anyone around you who says don't judge, laugh at them or smile politely and walk away, because that's crazy. You judge how fast a car is going when you cross the street, don't you? Now, why not judge meaningful things? What they're really saying is don't judge me because I'm ignorant, but I want to pretend to be wise. And they'll often say, don't judge me, and then let me give you advice. Let me give you my beliefs as though that's wisdom. Anyway, right, if it's a paradigm, it also has to apply to any other understandable system, including geometry. So we could call that sacred geometry. Understanding geometry as a whole, which should follow the dialectic, but also recognizing how geometry as a whole is a reflection of the logos. So you could get into Euclid's geometry, which is so every part of Euclid's geometry follows the dialectic. So you can say doing Euclid is a practice of the dialectic. It's like training for philosophy. But if at the whole time you're doing it, you're recognizing that, this is a paradigm. In other words, what I'm seeing in the physical world of geometry is a reflection of the higher, as above, so below, as we're seeing in the chat. Then every time I see something here in geometry, I can wonder about what it's reflecting in being. Just like everything I see in being, when I read the Meno, I can ask, what's its opposite in my problem? Because you're a human being, you've got a problem. You don't know you have this, but it's controlling you. It's a parasite. It's a psychic parasite. We need to uncover that. But likewise, when we're doing philosophical midwifery, whenever we learn about the pathologos, we can wonder about the logos. So that's sacred geometry. What we learn in geometry, so long as we look for the dialectic as we go, the same way as we're looking for the dialectic as we read the Meno, we can ask, what is it reflecting in being? So yeah, that's sacred geometry. The music of this, yeah, exactly the same. So in chat, Lisa Simpson is saying that's the music of the spheres. Absolutely. Same principle applied to music of the spheres. Because music of the spheres is the paradigm that we learn in the intelligible system of music, we see the same paradigm reflected in the intelligible system of astronomy, how the planets move. If we find the principle behind both, we can relate one to the other, so we can make a song that's telling us the music of the spheres. Just like if we find how to write stories using the same paradigm, using the model of all models, the art of all arts, and we're not just writing a great story, we are using all of the characters to reflect the logos, maybe reflect the Meno, then we are making an anime of philosophy, kind of. We don't have to tell people it's philosophy. They'll just really like it because it will resonate. The things that seem to work and become popular are things that work because they resonate in some way. Now, some things are popular, like Trumpism or fascism, because they resonate with this. Some things are true art, resonate with this. So that's the music of the spheres, or you could say that's linking astronomy with music. If you linked anime with philosophy, you could say that's the anime of philosophy or something like that. Or vice versa, the philosophy of anime. Storytelling. Or make a video game about it, either way. Right. The anger. So our anger is a message about this, because anger is about an injustice. We suffered in an injustice because we got our pathologos. Notice a pathologos is a response to the logos. So if somebody is just not doing much with their life, no one cares. But if it's LeBron James who's having more success because he's a great basketball player, then people want to abuse him. They care more about trying to knock him down because it's LeBron James. You wouldn't go to a primary school, a basketball game, a bunch of 8-year-olds playing basketball and say, "Boo, you suck. You suck, Kevin. You're the worst shooter in this 8-year-old basketball team." That would be crazy. People would think you're mental. But if it's LeBron James, so the higher we get on this ladder, the more our internal criticism surfaces. Now, where does that internal criticism come from? When we were young and we were doing well, that's when our earliest teachers came in and said, "No, you mustn't." And that's an injustice, because they were lying. They were conning you. It was a con. They knew they were playing an act. They don't know why, because they don't know the logos, but they know they're doing it. But we were too young to be able to judge, and we were dependent on those people. So we walk away sacrificing what we know and understand. Even as children, we were developing in this way. We sacrifice this to accept this. That's an injustice. That's why we have anger. Now, one of the causes to the problems we have in the world is, instead of learning the logos and the pathologos to address the cause of our anger by understanding this ladder, we project. We project onto other people, interpretation. Right? So there's that famous saying, all right-wingers, all the criticism of others are a self-confession. Famously, all of the priests that say, "Oh, homosexuality is evil," they turn out to be homosexual, and a lot of them themselves. So a lot of accusations are confessions. Like when you point the finger, you have 4 fingers pointing back at you, that kind of thing. What's the principle behind that? Projection. We don't see the world the way it is yet. We see through our pathologos. The whole reason why this ladder of the logos has 2 rungs, understanding and states of mind and experiences, is because we see through our understanding. So if you develop your understanding, you are able to experience the world more truthfully, the more it is, but also more levels of enlightenment. So you can say enlightenment, or truly knowing and identifying with the true self, the one self, and fully knowing mind itself, reality itself. Enlightenment, the highest level of enlightenment, is our natural state, because it's the self and it's our mind. It's all the mind, which is itself a reflection of self that is caused by self and can know self. It's our natural state. But there's something in the way. That's an injustice. And if this is our natural state, well, why aren't we seeing it? There must be a false image and belief about self and reality that we are projecting onto reality and responding to that. Right, let's give an example. Palestine. There's a streamer who is fantastic and wonderful named Denims, and I follow her on Twitch. She's amazing if you want to know about the world, the physical world, and want a good take and want to understand the politics of the world. She's the best I've seen. She talks about how people who are justifying the current genocide in Palestine, you'll say, well, look at these children being murdered. And they'll say, well, yeah, but you're a Westerner, but you're like, if you're a homosexual, so they would kill you. In other words, in order to justify the genocide, they fantasize about a terrorist killing you as though that's a justification. It's insane. Because they say the same thing about Westerners. Should you kill all Americans? Of course not. Oh yes, but there are many KKK members who would kill you just because you're black. So, in other words, they project a fantasy onto somebody else that doesn't exist at the moment. They're just making it up, and it's a fantasy of someone being murdered, and then they get angry about it. I'm projecting a fantasy that doesn't exist, and I'm getting angry about it as a way of getting sabotaged from understanding what's actually happening in the world and understanding the cause of those problems so we can address them by being distracted by this tangent of a fantasy that I project on the world and get angry about. That's what is happening. That's the current level of discourse. Now, what we want to understand is why. This is what we can do. This is what we can add to Denim's stream, or add to any kind of reporting on the nature of the world. What actual understanding is finding out what's really happening. That's the importance of reporting the facts, but also reflecting on it. So you can say climbing this ladder is understanding the cause. So the dialectic is a way of reflecting on causes. The cause of the physical world is the world of being. The cause of being is mind itself. The cause of mind itself is the one self. The cause of the self being able to unfold in this way is the logos. Another cause is the structure of paradigm. So formally, we can come up with a set of causes. Now, the causes we currently look at the world through are the Aristotelian causes. They're in this world. So we have the, like, for example, building a house, you have the wood or the material cause, you have the builders or the active cause or the doing cause or the efficient cause, you have the blueprints, formal cause, and you have the final cause, the purpose. There's actually one missing from that list, and there is that same list reflected in the realm of being. The 5 causes of the realm of being. Now, how do I know he's missing one? Easy. The paradigm. We don't just have to believe Aristotle that there are 4 physical causes. If we understand for ourselves and can verify in our own experience the paradigm, we can see, oh, this is how far Aristotle got in understanding the causes. Also, we can understand where he gets blocked. So if he came into our doctor's office as a philosopher, we could say, oh, this is where you're at, this is where you're blocked. Let's have a conversation. Let's use the dialectic. So what? Well, so reporting, as the great Denims is doing, is understanding what is. It's very important. She's very intelligent and very open-minded and kind-hearted. So that's very rare. So a lot of people aren't as intelligent, open-minded, and kind-hearted, and therefore cannot stomach or does not have the intelligence to see the facts. So I recommend her Twitch channel. But also, once you see the facts, you have to understand the causes, which is applying the dialectic. But also she talks about recognizing the causes of the distraction. If we want to understand the problem and solve the problem, we have to be climbing this ladder. But there are people who want to kick that ladder over. Shut up. Don't ask questions. Just like the guru says, shut up, get back on the mat. Just like the priest says, shut up and say your prayers. Just like your parents, when you're doing well, whoever was in your upbringing says, shut up with your goals, follow our family goals. Notice the feature of all of the blocks to the logos is some sort of shut up. So that's a tell, that's a clue. Anything that stops the logos, says shut up, ends the conversation. You are not good enough. You like in American politics, like in the 60s, the racism against black people, their reasoning was obviously false, that, oh, these black people are irrational. They can't share in the logos. They can't do understanding. And Martin Luther King, was saying, hey, let's show them, prove to these racist white people that we are rational. Even when they act in the most vicious ways to us, let's show them that we do our best not to retaliate and try and engage in understanding. Prove to these racist bigots that we have understanding. We aren't just animals. Now, every war starts by calling them animals because they need to get rid of they need to kick this ladder over. We can't reason with them. They're barbarians. Or in the Jews, they're just, what do they call them? Rats? Vermin? Notice Donald Trump is using the exact same language now about anyone non-white. Why? Because it kicks this ladder over. If it kicks this ladder over, all you can do is play out your vicious vice and your problems, your injustice. Oh, well, you can't reason with them. Let's just blow them up. That kind of crap. So when somebody says, hey, look at the nature of what's happening without projecting misinterpretation, not, hey, what does this book mean to you? But what does the book actually said? That's how we're reading the Meno. We're reading the Meno accurately as possible, word for word, with the actual ancient Greek, because we're not projecting. Different from our education. You go to English class. What does this book mean to you? That's not reading. That's projecting your own crap that you're already carrying. Who cares what you already carry? I mean, you care about it only in the sense that you want to uncover it and remove it. But other than that, you want to read the text for itself. You want to see what Socrates is saying, what the Logos is saying, what reality is saying in each moment. So she talks about how when you start talking about this, the Logos, the people who are very, very stuck, very, very high along here, the biggest tyrants and fascists and Nazis and all those sorts of words, in other words, have the biggest pathologos. One way they kick over the ladder is projection. I'm going to imagine one of these people I hate being mean to you, and then I'm going to get mad about it, which is nothing about what you're talking about. It's a tangent. One of the ways the pathologos works is to block the logos through tangents. When are you getting off on a tangent? When are you projecting these kinds of fantasies? Oh, those Palestinians, they hate women. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the murdering of hundreds of thousands of children and how that's objectively unjust. Oh, yes, but this is a fantasy. Now, we can also say, yeah, that happens all the way through. Catholic priests projecting about homosexuality, and then they get angry about it. Projecting. So what? We have to recognize that our anger is actually a message about our own problem. I mean, not always, but most of the time. Because you can get angry about actual genocide and stuff. But those kinds of anger, those kinds of projections of anger, is because we are angry because we suffered an injustice and our soul will not tolerate it. I will not tolerate you learning about philosophy, climbing towards the highest goals, without addressing this crap that you're carrying. You are not rubbish. Reality is not rubbish. I will not tolerate you carrying this belief about yourself that's so unjust. So I'm going to give you problems. I'm even going to block you from the most important thing, philosophy and midwifery. Because you also, well, not midwifery. I'm going to even block you from philosophy because you need to also do midwifery. midwifery, giving birth to those false beliefs and removing them. Because it's an injustice that you suffered. You either address it or you project it onto others and get angry at these others for things that they're not even doing. Like, oh, I'm imagining a Palestinian beating you up for being a woman or being gay or whatever. That's not happening. You can either project it onto others and get mad at them and justify genocide. In other words, act in the most unjust way. Or you can realize, you can reflect on yourself. That's called ousia. Let's write that on the board. Ousia is to reflect on self. Self-reflection. Reflect on yourself through ousia to find this, the cause of your projection. Ultimately, this mind experiencing itself is ousia. It's the highest level of ousia. So that's the significance of projection. And that's the cause of our anger. Now, we can ask, we can carry that with us in our reading to ask, when does Meno get angry at Socrates? When does he sabotage the logos to get angry? Okay, so this isn't just a review of philosophy and a review of where we are in the text. This is something we can take with us. Because if Meno is going along here, following the logos, and all of a sudden he gets blocked because he gets angry, we can, thumbs up, we can carry this with us and go, oh, we know this. He's getting angry at Socrates. Socrates for spending the time with the patience and justice to reflect in the highest way possible, to share his art, benefit his soul. Even Socrates he's getting mad at. Why? He must have a pathologos. That's where anger is telling us. So if anyone doesn't love denims, we had someone in our group who was triggered in a similar way, wasn't able to follow the logos, and got mad at denims for reporting the truth. That's obviously a problem of anger, which is a sign of a pathologos. In this group, it's gold. We want to surface our anger and our blocks so we can apply ousia and use that material for self-reflection to uncover our unsuspected false beliefs, our pathologos, and address them and free ourselves from them. That's freedom. Dr. Pierre Grimes, in one of the great interviews he had before he left us this year, he said in an interview with, it's a fantastic interview, Viveki, John Viveki, he's one of the most popular in terms of views. Modern philosophers, we would call it, not real philosophers, but pretty close, getting close. Genuinely, I think, kind-hearted, doing his best, but grew up in the Aristotelian academic tradition. So again, we're all in the same boat. Anyway, he says, no one, in this interview, he says, no one is free unless they do this. Even people who have reached levels of enlightenment. I've never seen anyone who's been free who hasn't got there through midwifery. So, good questions. So in chat, anthropologist so-and-so helped me understand some of my historical biases. Fantastic. So we have a fantastic level of integrity from our chatter, wanting to understand his own unsuspected biases. That's fantastic. Chakras. Yes, very important, chakras. So we would want to, again, use the dialectic structure of reality to say, how can we use the dialectic to understand our energy points within our physical body, that we can learn to move our hara, or our chi, or our breath, or our inner energy through, to move it up to the top and out of our body to that chakra point above our body. That's another way of understanding the dialectic, or the method of separating the soul from the body. You can be conscious of the energy points that go through if you want. No harm in doing that. But can you also use the dialectic to understand the structure of your chakra? Okay. John Trump, uncle to Donnie, is the one who went to Tesla's room after his death and stole all his wireless batteries and technology. Oh, I don't know about that. Your body is an energy field, the singularity in your heart. Well, if you mean the word heart metaphorically, because our soul can exist out of our body. So I think you mean that. I think you mean the heart energy point or something like that. But obviously it's not just physical. Belief is derived by other people's opinions, right? And your observations can, you either piecing it together to find things that confirm your opinions, which is the projection, and your fate. Like if you grew up racist, you will find things to confirm your racism, that kind of thing. Or you can go through learning the actual art to free yourself from that ignorance, free yourself from that fate, and use that freedom to climb the ladder to find the truth about self and reality. Yes, wondering about the infinite. Good. Develop questions. So all these quotes that we're getting in chat, I encourage you to turn them into questions, because then they can be avenues or accesses or invitations to the dialectic, if it's a question. Namaste means the divine in me sees the divine in you. Oh, nice. So yeah, we want to be able to see the divine, which is interesting, because even though most people are playing out their pathologos, that's not who they really are. Can we see the self or the divine, or both, behind their expression of the pathologos? Maybe that will help us relate to each other compassionately. And is Socrates doing that? Is Socrates looking past Meno's ignorance, Meno's upbringing, Meno's teacher, Meno's pathologos, to see the self and the divine within him? And is that what is that what Socrates is trying to relate to? And is that what is giving Socrates his immense amount of compassion, given that Meno could be, what did he call him? A beautiful jerk, a beautiful tyrant. Even a blind person, even a blindfolded person could tell that you're good looking because of how much of a tyrant you are, demanding answers. So patience. So yeah, to be able to see the self and the divine and the logos within everyone. That's the big three up there. The self, the logos, and divine, or mind itself. So Lisa Simpson, some very wise words in the chat from Lisa Simpson. Of course, Lisa is known for being smarter than Bart. Yes, passing on your false beliefs about beauty and therefore love. What is beautiful? What do we love? What is our model of care? Passing it on to our children. That's the family curse. That's a metaphorical way of talking about the pathologos. We're breaking the cycle. We're breaking the cycles of failure, not only within our soul, but within our family. Not only within our family, but within our society. Not only within our society, but within the world. Not only within the world, but our species. That's the effect. Now, primarily it's for our souls. It has that extra flow on to be that which will help humanity itself and our species itself end the cycles of this fate and create a system of cycles of this, create the conditions that we can pursue the logos. That's our excellence. Maybe that's our excellence. That's what we can ask. Can we not only discover what excellence is in this text, can we discover how we would use it by looking at Socrates, but can we also apply it not only to our souls, our internal dialogue? That's number one. How can we discover virtue and discover how we can apply it to ourselves? But also, how would we have to do it as a culture, as a species? As above, so below. So all of these are potential insights and rewards for us by reading the Meno in this kind of way, in the highest level of integrity, seeking the paradigm, applying it just like sacred geometry, applying it to here and here, judging Socrates and Meno, where are they here, reading accurately without projection. All of this way to derive the paradigm, understand the paradigm, and do our best to use it at all times. That's how we're reading. And if we are, we will gain these amazing rewards and level up by learning an art for how to treat ourselves, how we can reach our highest goals, how we can heal ourselves from our unsuspected problems, but also humanity itself. What does humanity need to lead? What is the art that humanity is lacking in the Logos? And what is the art that humanity is lacking in midwifery to remove the pathologos, such that we are not solving our problems, and so that we don't have a paradigm of truth that is always applicable, that applies to all people. Genocide isn't just bad for you, like the Jews who are killing the Israeli state who is doing genocide on the Palestinians. You say genocide was bad when it was done to you, but now you're doing it to somebody else. In other words, why don't you have a paradigm that's true for everyone? Why are we not appealing to principles to every single leader of every business and company and family and everything? There has to be a principle that we can all understand as a oneness, the many into a oneness, through understanding, not belief, not tradition, not opinion, understanding that we can confirm in our own experience, our own state of mind. That's true for everyone, allows us to understand and know ourselves. This is what is lacking. And also, by the way, the nature of the kind of injustices you're doing, where did that come from? Can we see in the Israeli state a earlier cause in history that they are projecting onto the Palestinians to do to them what was done to do to the Palestinians exactly what was done to them? Seems pretty obvious when you say it that way, because of Hitler and the genocide, that they seem to be doing the exact same thing, lacking a principle of integrity and justice to be able to hold all leaders to, and the world too. We lack the Logos, and also we lack the method of reflecting on the specific problems that they're having. What causes somebody to act like that? What causes people to do a genocide? What causes people to defend a genocide? What causes people to kick the ladder over to stop wanting to understand the genocide? So again, whether it's midwifery or philosophy, it's the dialectic. This is what is needed for humanity, and this is the possibility that we can gain if we do the Meno the way we're doing. And the way we're doing it seems to be doing this as well. Can we read it the way it is without projection to find the dialectic? So are we doing it? Are we not just defining the dialectic, but demonstrating it? And is that virtue? Are we, in order to learn virtue, do we have to do virtue? And if that's the case, does that help us answer the very first question of the very first sentence? Can virtue be taught? Or do you have to do virtue to find virtue? In other words, it can't be taught to you as a belief. It's something you have to do and understand you're doing, and do it at all time to integrate it into your being, which is a way of leading you to the self. If so, again, it's a question. We don't know. It's something to wonder about and be puzzled about. It's a question. We've got a whole sack of questions we're taking with us, and a whole sack of possible hypotheses to keep us curious, to keep us wondering. But if it does turn out to be the case, what a fantastic boon for us. What a reward for us. If that's the case. And that's where we're headed. So a good pause to review philosophy, review the paradigm of all paradigms, the art of all arts, but also we can take with us from this reflection new questions, new hypotheses that we can carry with us as we read to see if we can see it in the text. Not by projecting it, but by seeing if our questions are sufficiently and truthfully answered, in which case we might walk away from this text having leveled up and having benefited in all these wonderful ways. How exciting is that? To understand what we need in our world that might be causing us anger, and to understand in the world why we can't have a rational conversation, and understand what we need to add, and maybe even how to introduce it. How can we be a Socrates to the world? But specifically to ourselves, because we need to climb this ladder before we can help anyone else, really. I mean, you can do it both at the same time, but really, it's for yourself. How can we gain this art? and take it with us wherever we go, out of body, into our next life, into our next reincarnation, into other planets, wherever we go. It's a kind of learning that we can gain and benefit from in the highest possible way, the paradigm of all paradigm, the arts of all arts that we can take with us. Therefore, if it's a kind of education and nurture that we can take with us, it's probably what we're supposed to be doing while we're here, because in the physical world, we aren't here for a very long time compared to eternity. So if that's our question and that's what we're doing, maybe we're approaching our own existence, our own life in a mature and rational way. Maybe. Again, another question. And if so, how does this kind of education and nurture relate to virtue? Another question we can ask ourselves. So, will we get it? Will we benefit? What will happen to Meno? Can we become like Socrates? What happens to Socrates in the end? Lots of questions. Can we gain these potential rewards? Lots of possibilities, lots of excitement. On that cliffhanger, on that teaser, I hope to see you next time. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for the new chatters. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your reflection. Join on Discord. Follow on Twitch and YouTube. Going live notifications on Discord if you want to join that. Text is below for free. And I hope to see you next time. Thank you for joining me.